This is my Media Level 3 sound project, and today my guest is Tau Bennett. Tau, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. So, I'm just going to get straight into it. What is your earliest memory of puppets?
Oh, I don't know. Earliest memory, I think, my dad used to have this Kermit the Frog like hand puppet that he actually passed down to me because, as I got older, I got into puppets, and then I wanted that puppet for my own. But he used to play with it, like to me and my brother when we were babies. And I remember he would lip sync to like whatever Sesame Street tapes we had, like audio cassettes. Um, and of course, I knew Sesame Street as a very little kid. I was the last of three kids, so anything that, um, any like Sesame Street or Muppet projects that my family had on tape, which were many, I guess that we were kind of a Muppet family, I guess. My siblings had them first, and so by the time I came around, there were already a bunch of them to show me. So I was always watching Muppets.
Cool. And as you just said there, you were in a Muppet family. So,
Yeah.
when did you get into puppetry? When was it that you decided, hey, this is what I like?
I don't know. I guess as a kid, there were different stages of it. Like I said, I kind of always they were always around. My family kind of trusted the Muppets as entertainment. So, my parents grew up with it, and my older siblings also like had it. It was always around for them, and so for me, it was just like a familiarity thing. And so, as a little kid, I think the first time I really was like, this seems interesting, and I'd like to do it. It was probably when I was like, mm, I don't know. I've always wanted to try it, but then I saw. I think I was like 5 or 6 when I got the Sesame Street Old School Volume 1 DVD, and in that there was like a little booklet that had there were pictures of all the like main performers in those early days. It was Jim, Frank, Jerry, and Fran and Carol, and I saw there were behind the scenes pictures in the booklet of them working, and I thought that seems pretty interesting. I'd like to see what that's like, and I think
So,
from that point on,
so would you say Sesame Street and the performers were one of your early inspirations?
yeah, for sure. I mean, there were other puppet things that I used to like too, but yeah, Muppets was pretty much the thing that everybody that likes puppets seems to gravitate to, or for the most part.
Did you have any specific performers that you'd look to and think, hey, I want to be like them? Were there any idols specifically?
Yeah, there were always a few. I mean, there's always quite a few for me. Like still to this day, I think about specific people for different reasons. Um, as a kid, it was mostly Kevin Clash because he was the first black performer with the Muppets, and I looked up to him for that reason. Like there was no one else like him, and so I looked at him as a as a guiding figure. But then other puppeteers too, like Frank Oz, his sense of humor, I kind of was always trying to tap into whenever I would perform or try to perform, and voices were always a thing for me. And I would think about Jerry Nelson and how he had a wide range of voices, and Dave Goelz, his manipulation was always superb. And I kind of, the different performers I look at for different reasons.
You mentioned there Kevin Clash. Obviously, you will probably be best known to some people for appearing in Being Elmo, the 2011 documentary,
Right.
and you became very good friends with Kevin.
Right.
How did that opportunity to meet him come about?
I've told this story so many times. Let's see. It all started when I was about 10. Um, I was living in Georgia at the time, at Augusta, Georgia, and my mom was working in the office at my school, and so she knew that I love puppets, and so had she got us like a subscription to the Center of Puppetry Arts, like catalog, whatever you call it. So it was like a booklet that would give you like information about the upcoming year of like shows and exhibits and things. And so one day I came to school and she was, in the office, and she was like, "Hey, look at this Tau." And I flipped through it. I was interested to see what was going on. And I saw that Leslie Carrara Rudolph was doing a show. Leslie plays Abby Cadavia on Sesame Street. She was doing a show in a few months at the center, which was only about 2 hours away from where I lived at the time by car. And I'd never met any Muppet performers before that, so I wanted to meet her really badly, just so I could show my face and let her know that I existed, and that I wanted to be, with the Muppets one day. And so at the time, I had made maybe a few puppets, and they were all Sesame Street replica puppets. And so I begged my mom to take me to see the show, and over the course of a few months, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to go for time and money or whatever. But over the course of the few months, I got my parents decided, okay, well, we should go just to give him that chance, and so it was very nice of them. So we drove there, and I brought this Ernie puppet that I made. It was really an awful looking puppet, but it was Ernie. And I sat in the front row, and Leslie noticed me immediately. She was doing the show, and she saw me in the front row with my Ernie puppet, and I was reacting to the show as myself, but also reacting with Ernie. It's two separate entities reacting to the show. And she couldn't take her eyes off me. She says the whole time she was just focusing on that. And so after the show, she was like, "Hey, don't leave yet. I want to talk to you." And so she was telling me, like, you remind me so much of Kevin, and you have a really good sense of manipulation, stuff like that. And I was very flattered. And it felt like a dream because I was a 10-year-old kid, and I my first time meeting a Muppet performer, and she's already like, "Hey, let me talk to you about this and that," which was very cool. She's a really great soul, very giving. And so at the time they were working on Being Elmo, they had just finished filming it, and they were about to go into the Sundance Film Festival. And they needed someone to bring the story kind of full circle, to kind of put a nice button on the story. And they were looking for someone to properly do that. Since they asked Kevin if he knew anybody that he was mentoring, and he could maybe mention that in the movie. And Leslie didn't. She told Kevin about me, and at the time she didn't have any of my contact information or my parents' information at all. She just, that was it. But so she she went back to the center, and she lives in New York, and so she traveled back to Atlanta, just so she could get my parents' information from the center, just to see if they had any information. And she called up my mom through that, and got she got her information and my house phone number. And so one day Kevin, called me, and this is in the documentary. The phone call was, the real, candid phone call. It's in the documentary of him talking to me and asking me about, what kind of puppets I make and all kinds of things. And it was amazing. So from that point on, he was like, "Oh, would you like to come and meet me in New York?" And of course I said, yeah. So a couple weeks later, I met Kevin, and the rest is history.
Yeah, as you said, it was in the documentary where he rang you up for the first time, and if I can get it, I'll try and clip it up. I will, but that's such a great moment where he goes, "I'm Kevin Clash," and you go, "No, you're not."
Yeah,
goes,
I couldn't believe
I know
it.
who I am.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. But he also helped you to perform in 2011 at the Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York.
That's right. Yeah.
And you were alongside Marty Robinson, who was Telly, and you were Baby Bear. How was that for you at such a young age? What was that like as an experience?
Well, that was also like a dream. In the weeks leading up to it, they were, the movie had already come out, and so they were doing a lot of Q&As and screenings for it. And so my first time meeting Marty was at one of those screenings. And Kevin was, the parade was coming up in a few weeks, and Kevin was saying, like, "Oh, you're going to be doing Baby Bear. You're going to have to, strengthen up your arms and stuff." And Marty's actually a very I don't know if you know this, but he does martial arts, and he's very spry and very like fit. And so he was telling me, yeah, you gotta do some push-ups and start lifting a little bit. I was 11. I was a small kid. um, but yeah, they were very they were trying to make sure that I did well. That everybody from the point that I met them up until now, and hopefully in the future, they're very caring and they want me to do well, which I appreciate quite a bit. And so the day I got to the parade and Kevin was there and everybody was very supportive. Um, it was just weird. It was odd. I had never done anything like it before, and Kevin was, sort of like a fatherly figure, kind of guiding me through the whole process, and it was very new to me, obviously, and so I was a little bit nervous, but also it felt right. I was nervous because I wanted to do well, but I also didn't have anything to lose because it was, I was a kid, like whatever. They didn't care. They know what my abilities are, and they just want me to get better. And I think on some level, despite how new it all was, I kind of was aware of that, subconsciously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it did seem like, I think it is on the DVD.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of very embarrassing footage of me as an 11-year-old kid.
And I think Marty does say to you, if I can remember, did you do your push-ups?
Yeah, I'm sure he does say that.
so
Yeah.
he was preparing you.
Yeah.
So as Kevin continued to mentor you throughout the years, and then in 2012 he had to leave for what we'll say were reasons. How did that impact your relationship with the Muppet world?
It stunted it. I was very much not like heavily involved before that. Like, I was around for those Q&As and I did that one parade, but like they knew who I was, that they had met me a couple times, and Kevin was very keen on bringing me around to events and things just to kind of get me in that world. And so once he was out of the picture, it was very, I didn't have any other way of contacting anybody. I didn't have a phone until I was like 13. And it would have been, weird if I had just said, hey, can I just like get in here? It wouldn't make any sense. And so my point of contact with those people was sort of stunted at that point. But it certainly taught me a lot. It gave me room to grow as a performer outside of puppetry, and as a result, it informed my puppetry for the future. It was a good thing, I think.
That was actually going to be my next question. How did you continue to grow as a puppeteer through your teenage years without the aid of Kevin and the Muppet performers?
Yeah, in a way, it was a good thing. I started doing theater. My mom she pushed me to join this theater company called TADA, Youth Theater. TADA is an acronym for Theater and Dance Alliance, and it was a youth theater group for kids ages 8 through 18. And at the time I was 12, and I wasn't really interested in doing theater because I'm more of a film TV guy, and I preferred puppets because I could perform and not have to worry about being seen at all. I didn't like to show my face, especially live. It was very nerve-wracking to me. And so I had no interest in doing Tada at the time. My mom, she was like, you should do it. It'll make you better. And I didn't really have a choice. It was under my mom's jurisdiction. So she kind of, she forced me to do it, and I did it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, actually, because I learned a lot as a performer, as a person. I spent those next 6 years of my life meeting people who just made me a better performer, and a better person. Like I didn't have many friends at the time. I was sort of a weird kid, and this is middle school, so middle school wasn't very easy. Being a puppeteer and being as small as I was, and so it was nice because I got to meet other performers and people who were interested in similar things as me. Not necessarily puppets, but humor and music. I had a very specific sense of humor, and it just sort of developed over time. I met a group of people who could sort of help me nurture that sense of humor and that sense of art. I actually developed a sketch comedy group outside of puppetry. It was a group of 5 guys. We call ourselves PORC. It's another acronym for Party of Regal Crusaders. Crusaders spelled with a K. And yeah, so through being in the theater and being sort of forced to get out of my comfort zone, I think it made me a better performer. Yeah, and I learned a lot.
Well, that's really, really good. So, obviously, as you said, you continue to grow through the theatre group over the years, and then eventually you found yourself in the promised land on Sesame Street.
Right. Yeah.
Which is obviously a dream for every performer, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
How did it happen?
Well, let's see. So through so being in Tada, I guess I was I was building my chops and I was learning things and I sort of developed a voice, for myself. I think before that didn't really know what kind of performer I really was, and then learning the things that I learned through Tada, I I I had developed a sort of something that I thought would go well with the big time performers. And I thought by the time I was 16, legal to work, I thought, oh, I could do this. And so at age 16, I had a phone by then, and I was on Instagram, and I saw Ryan Dillon's Instagram page. Ryan Dillon is the current performer of Elmo, and he has his own stuff too. He's got a group a group of characters called the Dylan Gale Idiots. He works with another puppeteer named Mark Gale and Frankie Cordero and other people, and it's a very funny group of characters. And his Instagram and his work sort of inspired me to try to get back into that Muppet world, because I saw the kind of things they were doing at Sesame Street, and I really, I wanted to be in there and learn from them how to do it. I had ideas to do my own stuff too, and I still do, and I want to get that stuff done too. But I figured being at Sesame Street would teach me the things I need to know in order to properly do my own stuff. And so I found through Facebook there was a monitor night. There's these things called Puppet Kitchen, monitor nights at the Puppet Kitchen, which was Puppet Kitchen was this puppetry workshop place where puppeteers go every month, I guess, and they would get together in front of a camera and monitor and just kind of mess around and do some puppet stuff and improv and learn things. And it's not really quite the same as it was back then. It's the guy who ran it, Michael Schupak, who actually used to wrangle at Sesame Street. He ran Puppet Kitchen, but over time he kind of was like, I want to move on to other things. And so he moved to Nashville, and now Puppet Kitchen's it's not really the same thing. But at that time he was still there, and I wanted to try it. Being in high school, I wasn't really able to do it as often as I'd like to, but there was a couple times in the summer when I was able to. And so there was one where Stephanie DeBruzzo, who plays a bunch of Sesame Street characters, and she's on Avenue Q, and she was teaching a workshop at one of the monitor nights, and I wanted to get in there and see her and remind her that I existed and see if I could get a job. And I asked her, I was like, are there any workshops? Are there anything going? Because I first of all, I showed her what I could do, how I'd grown and improved since the age of 12, and she was very impressed. And I'm often the youngest person in the room in these sorts of events, and so it was sort of interesting to be there for that. And I asked her about workshops and what was the possibility of me getting to work at Sesame Street, and she was like, well, I don't know, because things have changed. There's a bit of downsizing that's been happening over the last couple of years, and things are very different. The new regime is sort of has changed the way things work, so I don't know. was her answer, and I it was a little bit discouraging because I could see what she meant, and I figured, she's right, that it doesn't seem to be a thing that would likely happen, especially given the fact that a lot of people are gone and a lot of the way things work is very different. I can see it just from watching the show, but I still wanted to give it a try. I knew that she wasn't like like the authority in terms of like hiring and firing, because if it was up to her, she would have hired me. I should hope. But things were different, and so I thought about it for a little while, and then a couple days later, actually, I was a junior in high school, and I messaged Matt Vogel on Facebook, and I said, "Hey Matt, I'm 16 and legally I can work. So do you think there's a possibility that I could work with you guys? I've improved over the years since you last saw me. What do you think?" And he said, "Yeah, well, send me a video, and we'll take it from there." Well, I think at that time he also wanted to have me on the float already, like the Sesame Street float, before even working on the show, which was interesting. I kind of liked that idea. And so yeah, there was a workshop that happened a couple of months later, or about a month later, I guess. And from that workshop, it was 2 days. I think it was 5 days, but they only had me on for about two. And then from there, he was like, "Yeah, I think we'll have you on the show this season." And that was, hearing those words was like, it was crazy. I like, the time kind of stopped for me. I think that's the thing for a lot of people. When they hear those words, things sort of just get a little woozy.
So obviously that was an incredible opportunity. What season did you join?
That was season 48.
Season 48, and it's now 51. You're now filming, so you've been there for a good number of years.
Yeah, this is my fourth year.
Fourth year. So can you tell us what that first day was like?
Yeah, the first day, my mom drove me there, and she dropped me off, and I sort of wanted to be independent. I was 16, but I wanted to, be as adult as I could be, and just kind of get comfortable. And so she left, and they put me. I didn't, like, the puppeteers they didn't know that I was there, and I'm always pretty early when I get there, so I got there kind of early, and I had been on the show once as a kid when I was like 11. Just because Kevin wanted me to just be on the set and just see what it's like, and so he had me on as just some kid actor. And at that time, they had me in the kid room. There's a separate room for kid performers, just to be, like where they congregate before they go on set. And so at 16, they thought that that's where I should be. So they put me, the kid wrangler put me in there, and she was like, "Okay, well, you can just chill here for a little while." And so I was like, "All right, that's fine. I don't know anything different, so I'll just chill here." So a couple minutes passed, and I walked around the room. It was very weird because there were like a couple other like little kids, like 10 like and younger kids, and I was like, "Okay, well, this is interesting." So I just kind of milled about for a few minutes, and then 8:15 came, and my call time was 8:15, and somebody had called the Muppet room, and they're like, "Hey, where's Tau?" And like, "I don't know. I didn't hear him come in." And so somebody made some call, and I think it was Marty. He found where I was, and they said, "Oh, sorry, there was a mistake. I guess we should put him in the Muppet room because he's a Muppet performer now." So they took me to the Muppet room, and they made jokes about it. And it was just so weird just being there as a 16-year-old. It was really odd, and but it was very nice. Everybody was super cool and very nice, and they wanted me to succeed. So Marty especially was really a mentor that day. He took me around and, like, introduced me to everybody. I met Frankie Biondo, the cameraman who's been there since day one. I met the whole crew and all the puppeteers and everybody. I kind of stuck to Marty all day. And that day I was left-handing for Jennifer Barnhart because she's left-handed, so I was doing her character's left hand. It was Rosita's grandmother, and for a Thanksgiving episode in season 48, and it was really really interesting. Uh, yeah, I think they were all very impressed by not just like my puppetry abilities, because they knew that that's what I could do, because that's what I was there for, but also just like who I was. I think I think at one point I was sitting next to Peter Linz, who plays Ernie now and Harry Monster and other Muppet characters. I was sitting next to him, and he said something about, he was talking to, I think, Jen, because he had seen my audition video that I sent in for the workshop, and he was like, "Hey Jen, did you see this kid's audition video?" She was like, "No, I haven't." And he was like, "Oh, it's really funny. It's one of the funniest things." And he kept saying it was hilarious, and I was like, "Wow, I'm funny? Cool." Like Peter Linz thinks I'm a funny guy. Well, that's right on. I thought that was really nice. And he and I had started doing Two-Headed Monster. Like we were just doing the voices of Two-Headed Monster, and then after we were riffing on that, he kind of just like stared at me and was like, "Wow." And just seeing the people that I looked up to be sort of, I guess, impressed by what I could do was just, I thought it was very very cool, and I really liked that I got to be there.
That must be an incredible experience, moment, to live that, all your heroes around you going, wow, this kid's good.
Yeah, it was nice.
So obviously you've been there 4 years, as you said. Do you have any interesting stories of your time working on Sesame Street?
I've got plenty. I could go on forever. Let's see. The season 50 special that we shot was very fun. Like I said before, the show is very different from how it was in the beginning and how most people grew up with it. And it's a very different show, and but the special it felt like the show that most people grew up with. I mean, well, at least to film it, it felt right. It was like, I think somebody on set was like, "Wow, this feels like Sesame Street," which I understood what they meant, and I agreed. It was cool that Kermit the Frog was there. I got to see Kermit the Frog on set. Something about that just like made everybody.
Was that your first time seeing or working with one of the Muppets, like the Disney Muppets?
No, I did before. Let's see, was this before? Yeah, this was a few months prior to that Puppet Kitchen night. I hadn't met him before, but I saw Steve Whitmire for the first time in like maybe 4 years. And him and Eric Jacobson and Peter Linz were doing a panel about the Muppets and puppetry, and they had Kermit and Fozzie and Animal and some whatnots there, and as part of the talk, the panel, they did a little bit of a Muppet performer workshop, sort of just like and they asked for random audience members to come up and try doing monitor stuff, and they called out. They said, anybody who wants to volunteer, put your hand up. And of course, my hand shot up, and I was way in the back. I didn't think they'd see me, but they did. I think Peter was like, "Hey, you with the glasses, come here." And I was like, "Me? All right." And so I went up, and I got to put on one of the Frackles from the Muppet Show. And so yeah, I was in the mix for that. But that was my first and only time ever like seeing like a Muppet Show character in person, and like being around those characters. I don't think I have ever done anything with those characters otherwise. But yeah, so the special was very cool, and it was just so interesting seeing all these people. I that day when Kermit was there, I was watching him sing "Being Green" with Elvis Costello, and it was, everybody. It was completely silent in the room, but the whole room was full of people because it's Kermit the Frog, and everybody wanted to see that. And it was just weird. There's just this dreamlike moment. Everybody's completely silent. People are tearing up, and Heather and Cheryl Henson were there, and they almost weren't even there that day. They were at the Muppet workshop where they build the puppets down a couple blocks away from where they shot the show, and they were just there in the workshop, and somebody said to them, you guys should go over to Kaufman and watch them film the special. And they were like, oh, I don't know, we're kind of just like hanging out. We're not gonna stay very long. And they said, oh, you should go. And so they ended up just going on a whim, and they happened to see Kermit. They didn't know he was going to be there. They had no idea what was happening that day. And so just all these things coming together, it was crazy. And later that day, I got to perform Roosevelt Franklin for a shot in the special.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was nice. There was it was a shot where they were singing "Sing," that Joe Raposo song, and there's a shot where they had all these classic characters who don't really exist anymore. Harvey Kneeslapper and Don Music and Lefty and all these characters, and Roosevelt Franklin was one of the characters in the mix. And they said, "Do you want to put him on?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course." And so I got to do that. So the whole special was a very big highlight for my time at Sesame.
Wow, it does. Obviously, I've not seen the special because Sesame Street doesn't air in the UK anymore. But from what I've heard, it's really, really good.
Oh yeah. The special was very, very good.
Did you get a photo with Kermit?
No, actually, they made a point of that. They said no pictures of the frog because some whatever Disney nonsense.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That does make sense. You don't want to be sued.
Yeah, which really sucks because if had we been able to, there would have been tons of pictures, and it would have been a very historical moment. But it's in the special, so at least we got to see that.
Yeah. Carol Spinney, you got to work with for a couple of years, who sadly passed away back in December.
Mm-hmm.
How big an impact did he have on your career from the short time you had him?
Well, actually, I didn't really know him that well. I had met him a couple times. I met him. He had already had dystonia when I first met him, but it wasn't too bad. His speech was still pretty clear, and his he was able to walk. Let's see. Yeah, so Carol, he was still okay. Like he was able to walk a little bit, and he was speaking pretty well. And he was still able to draw, which was that was the thing that I really wanted to do with him because I also draw. And so when I met him, I was like, man, I really want to just get a picture that he drew, and I want to give him this picture that I drew for him. It was a picture of him for him. And I had one copy for the original copy, and he signed that, and I made a Xerox of it and they gave it to him. And so he and Debbie had a drawing that I did of him, which was very cool. That was just, that day was really cool. I remember when I met him, he and Debbie were talking about how Matt had a lot of good things to say about me. Matt Vogel had good things to say about me, which I didn't expect them to say that, or even for Matt to say anything about me. So that was very nice. Gave me some chills. Carol was just a really cool guy. He was just very nice, and I wish I spent more time around him, but unfortunately I couldn't really, because he was, he got very sick and very slow, unfortunately. But the last thing that I got to, I worked with him. I did a couple scenes with him after that in season 50. Yeah, season 50. There was one thing that I did. Excuse me, 1 second. A little congested. 1 second.
Take as much time as you need.
Thanks. Delicious. There was one scene that he did where it was like his last scene as Big Bird, doing the voice as Big Bird. And I was right-handing for Oscar that day. And so, he was there on set, and there was another situation where everybody, a bunch of people were there to watch this historic moment. Maria was there, Fran Brill, I think Gina was there. A bunch of people were just there to see it. Um, and yeah, I mean, I got to right hand for one of his characters and just be next to him and work with him. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it was just very cool. And then the last, after he did his last scene, um, I was on the floor, just I was just doing whatever the scene with Oscar, and me and Eric Jacobson were on the floor, and I looked up and I saw Carol just sitting in his chair, and Debbie was next to him, and everybody in the room was applauding for him, and they played the classic, or I guess classic for me because I grew up at that time, the '90s Sesame Street theme song with the calypso music. It was just for some reason that sound and just the whole vibe around the room and the people in the room and the whole thing just made it was just a very, very surreal, very special moment. Just like looking around the room and just like seeing the whole thing happen. It was just really a
Wow.
dream,
That must have been a very special. That even though you didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, you did, get to meet him and work with him, which must have been incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving on, you said earlier that you have your own ideas for projects in the future,
Mm-hmm.
and the Muppets, they might not be around forever. Sesame Street or the Muppets, or Fraggles, or all of them. They could go tomorrow. So, what are your career goals as a puppeteer?
Well, I've got I've got a project that I'm currently working on, and then I got projects in my mind that I've been coming up with other ideas for. I got this thing called Cold Sober, which is it's in the works. It's the sketch show with puppets, and it's very weird and surreal, and it's sort of it's an assault on the senses, and it's also a lot of fun, I think. It's sort of it's the Monkees mixed with Monty Python, mixed with classic Muppets, mixed with Looney Tunes, and it's all these different things. It's Mel Brooks, it's Frank Zappa, it's all my favorite things, sort of mutated into one entity, and hopefully it'll something will come of it, something bigger than. So far, what I've done was this just one 15-minute sketch, I guess special, if you will. Yeah, and it's that's right now what I want to do, what I'm doing, and it's really the goal is just to get a bunch of people that I like together and just have some fun playing with puppets and do some good work. Sort of classic, sort of reminiscent of what the Muppets originally were. Just people, a bunch of friends doing fun stuff and making some art.
That sounds really cool. And let me know when, what was it, Cold Sober, did you say?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, when you do that, let me know, because that actually does sound amazing. That sounds incredibly
For sure,
funny.
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, anybody that wants to be a part of it is welcome, as long as they're willing to make some weird stuff.
I am willing.
Of course.
I am willing. Sign me up.
You're invited.
Brilliant. Do you have any advice for young puppeteers who are aspiring to be on the Muppets or create their own stuff?
Yes. In terms of the Muppets, if your goal really is to do that, don't let that be your only goal. Because once that's done, then you have nothing else. Once the Muppets are gone, then you have to. What are you gonna do? And also to be a part of the Muppets, it takes a level head. I think you have to really be ready to adjust to change and adjust to what's happening, like what's going on, because things change very frequently, and sometimes not for the better, but at least what is better is as long as you are as long as you keep a level head, then you will remain in everyone else's view as a contender for future work. You know, even if it's not Muppets, if it's something within that realm, if it's, you know, something slightly removed, but still within the same realm of people, that group, because the puppetry community is very small. Everybody knows each other. And so, you know, people will recommend you for stuff as long as you're a good worker, as long as you are a good, because it's all about being a good person. The Muppets it's about people who work well together. So, and to bridge that with something else, if you want to be a puppeteer in general, it's all the same. You know, people, like I said, the community is very small, and one thing leads to another always. So you do something, that thing that you do will be remembered by somebody within the community, and that'll either get you more work, or it might reduce the work depending on the kind of person you are. But yeah, it's always just a matter of that, and doing your own work is always encouraged. I think you definitely should do your own work. Any idea that you have, run with it, because nobody has the same ideas that you have, because they're your ideas. Obviously, people might have a similar idea, but the voice that you have is different from someone else's voice, and your thoughts are your own thoughts, and nobody can do the same thing quite like you. So yeah, just always be ready to always do your own work. You know, and I got tons of other advice, but I could be here forever.
That's incredible advice, you know, to a young puppeteer such as myself, or many others when this goes out, because I probably will, you know, release it, and young puppeteers that I've spoken to will take that, because that is fantastic advice.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
I've got one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
When it all finishes, when it all comes to an end, how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. I don't think about that too often, but let's see.
Nice.
Thank you. That's how I'll be remembered. Gas. No, I don't know. I guess someone who I'd like to be remembered for the work that I've done. You know, the original stuff that I've done. Of course, anything that I do it's nice to be remembered for. But really, the things that I've come up with, I want people to know that, you know, I was trying to do something different, and I was trying to do something fun and new, and something worth doing. You know, I like the idea of people wanting to be a part of something that I created. It's just a nice thought.
Well, Tau, I'm all out of questions, and all I have to say now is, Tony, please just give me a pass. That's all I want. Just don't fail me. You know, this has been a lot of work and a lot of effort, so don't fail me. But Tau, thank you so much for
Of course.
for joining me.